I don't think through art we can really accomplish a lot. I don't think so. I think it's like a paper cut. Like, you know how they're annoying, very tiny, but they really hurt. They create a disruption. It doesn't matter how small they are, but within your daily, they create a disruption. Yeah, I think that's what I'm trying to do. Paper cuts. My name is Banu Cennetoğlu. I try to work with words and images and the kind of politics and the forms around memory, loss, grief, organization of knowledge, and what do we do with that knowledge. I don't think I have a role as an artist. I think I'm trying to do as a person something, and whatever I do, in whatever version of me, you know, I'm trying to really pay attention to what I suggest, and I try to take responsibility for what I do.
It's not finished yet, but I was invited to make a piece for the opening of the Zurich new police headquarters, and then it was a bit strange to collaborate with the police. So I just felt, I mean, also like, I question a lot about, positions, implications, complicity, all this, what are these things, So I invited all of us, including police, the municipality, people working in the municipality in relation to this project, and the fellow curators and artists, and then to send a handwritten apology. I didn't want to know what is the apology is for, but must be something that they want to apologize for. So these are all their handwriting in the original size and form. Just I made a transfer to the acid etching. There are 44 of them.
I guess I always kind of departed from a place, even today, some kind of inexplicable urgency. I mean, it could be a very personal place, it could be a very non-personal kind of social place, it could be a very kind of reactionary place. But somehow this kind of feeling like, I have to do this. I mean, when I was still studying psychology and photography, there was no such a thing like, oh, I want to be an artist. I just wanted to do what I wanted to do. And then I started to think about the audience, the context, how to show, why to show, and where to show, with whom. I don't have a ready-made recipe. I don't have one methodology. And every time even like within the same work, different iterations, every time for me it's a new encounter, and with the new context. Very strong part of my work and also my personality comes from doubt. I am trying not to lose that. It comes from a place, okay, how do you continue, how do you endure within the world that we live in, How do you work when there's a war outside? How do you work when you witness a genocide? How do you work when there's someone dying in the house? Do we have to work? So what is work? False Witness was a book work I did in 2005. I was living in Amsterdam back then and studying at the Rijksacademie. I mean, that's the start also. I started thinking a lot about border politics and both in terms of the nation states and within the EU context and outside of the EU context, and that kind of and what was going on, all of that, what was going on. So I wanted to visit a particular asylum seeker center called Ter Apel. It was close to German border, and because I read an article, I remember there was, of course, 20-some years ago, there was a new architectural and a new institution, and then they were very ambitious somehow to reflect the ideology of asylum acceptance into the architecture. I wrote to them, and so I was permitted inside of the institution, and of course I was not interested and not willing to photograph any person, but I wanted to photograph within their consent architecturally. I kept this tension I was remembering how I could translate that tension into a book form. It was a very small book, 32 images. It was the first book I published. We were talking about an edition of 1,000. It was huge for me, So they did distribute for some years, and then one day, I think after 5 years or maybe more, 7 years, and then John calls me and says, "Banu, we have a system at Idea Books. If certain books are not sold completely after a certain period, we have to trash them." What do you mean? Yeah, we just it's a storage, it's money, and it's like, okay. So, but he was kind enough to send all the leftovers to me to Istanbul. And I was like, okay. So I looked at it. I felt very alienated by it. And the sequence of images somehow. So I was a bit like, what is that? And I remember that moment, I have to do something with this. And I decided to convert them into briquettes. Briquette is, it kind of derives from the word bricks, but they're not bricks. It's a combustible material, so it's served from different recyclable material to start a fire. I really see them as another potential. I really see them, because the book also is a potential. When I remember when I did False Witness after Ter Apel, there was a lot of projection there for me to, this book has the potential, or I want the book has the potential to trigger, to generate questions, and maybe even eventually change little things and so in a way that potentiality now it's more functional, because this is a kind of a serious briquette. That's how it's done, and so it carries the full potential of starting a fire. We have here newspapers from the UK from 2014, newspapers from Germany 2015, Norway 2019, and Austria 2020, and Denmark 2025. And when you look at the local news and how many of them are printed, what is print, what are they really conveying? It tells a lot about the world we live in, unfortunately. And I started in Turkey 2010, and it really came like one day in the studio. I was just checking the news, and I grew up reading newspapers. I'm also, I have a habit to buy a newspaper, and I always kind of collected them or cut things, And so it was a very basic question, and I'm like, okay, so there are 3 newspapers in front of me, and then I'm looking at this, for one, that piece of information, it's 14 by 6, and then in the other one, it's a headline, and then the other one doesn't even have it. So we are living in the same day, same country, 3 different newspapers, and they are not so radically, ideologically different from each other, because we don't have such a spectrum, But even that piece of information so I was able to see simultaneously 3 of them and being able to look at, and to read as one thing. So, of course, that made me think, like, what if, like, what is, a person in the southeast of Turkey or on the Black, sea coast, like, what are they looking at? In terms of today, this particular day in time, what are they seeing? Again, just let's remember that we are talking about 2010, so like a kind of the capacity of the digital media or social media and all that is a different scale. So, and then I really wanted to see all of them together and see how they kind of create these spaces, because a newspaper is an organized space, it's a very political space, it's a space of power, but then the work itself is constant transformation. Also, the nature of the paper, right? Who knows what's gonna be on those pages in 50 years now. They are touchable, they are never shown under the vitrine. And so for me, it's very important the kind of the audience, experiences them also physically and, kind of stains hands or experience the kind of paper, because it really makes a difference also what kind of paper or ink used. And it tells a lot about the conditions of the context. Even kind of ads, the classifieds and the real estate pages, the numbers, and so it's very important, kind of, I think, for someone to be engaged with them physically rather than just see them as an image under the vitrine. Right? Question mark is about the rendering of Universal Declaration of Human Rights in golden mylar balloons, and so it's I think this is one of the very few works of mine. I don't have so many works like this. It's very, in a way, it's very clear what it's trying to say, at least as a kind of, in the first encounter. There is a declaration, a very ambitious one, 1948, with a lot of promises and potential. And we have it today, the situation that we live in. So, and there is large bouquets of decaying and deflating golden letters. I think it's quite clear what it's trying to say. But of course, I guess what I like to kind of take further, to kind of question this kind of very monumental texts, agreements, contracts, declarations, and both in terms of their conceptions, historically speaking, and also now, what are their relevance really? But even we go back in the history in 1948, when it was conceived after the atrocities of Second World War, it's really a document only protects the citizens of nation states. So it was never really conceived for the stateless people, which is really weird, because we are talking about thousands and thousands of immigrants after the Second World War, and here is like a very ambitious declaration with full of promises, but completely excluding stateless status, stateless people. Stateless people meaning, anybody who could be deprived of any nationality. So this declaration was meant to be effective only for people who are already bound to a polity or to a kind of nation-state construction. Though it claims about rights that are inalienable, which means the fact that you're a human being, should be enough that you would be protected for those rights. So it has this kind of very dialectic and kind of problematic kind of start. And so then with, of course, the infamous words of Hannah Arendt, who has right to have rights. And I think today, given the conditions that we are in, and the whole international community creates even more rightless people, rather than kind of to struggle or to kind of work on the application of those rights. So unfortunately it's in its own spectacular way is a quite irrelevant piece.